that set. You have that set. And okay, cool. All right. So, as the statement said, as long as I get my 4 answered, everything else is free game.
Nice.
If it takes us 10 minutes, it takes us 10 minutes, which it never does. It
Yeah,
never,
yeah, yeah.
ever,
No,
ever
I've been
does.
listening to a bunch of your podcasts here, so yeah, it's been really good. And then I've been even I think I'll start turning it in like my lesson plans for students because we do like a communication and safety and letting them know about it because I think it's important to like what you do is important, right? So just the things that like empowerment and just getting technicians kind of some of them out of their shell and just learning new things, right? Because we can always get stuck in a rut and everyone just kind of stays where they're at and they're unhappy. I remember that you had one podcast where you talked about a guy that he was unhappy
Mhm.
and everyone in the shop was leaving and it ended up being was it him that was kind of the
Yeah,
issue?
he was. I'm sorry, I've done enough of them now that I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
have to go back to notes to reference them. But I think I did one on a gentleman who had a completely rotating shop after, and I think if I recall, it was like after 4 years, he was the only one left that was there when he started. He's
Yeah.
he's
Mhm.
like a man on island kind of
Yeah. Yeah.
circumstance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember listening to that one and going, "Holy crap! Like that's such like a to, and then for you to help him through that realization too, right? That and I was like, man, this that had some weight. I kind of felt that, right? So
There's
yeah.
a couple of them. Like there's unfortunately I've done a lot of sessions I can't
Hmm.
share.
Yeah.
I try to reference them if I can, and I know I've dialed back on the content because taking my own advice. You're doing too much. You're not spending time with family or whatever. And that was me. I
Yeah.
spend 40 hours a week in the shop, and then 40 hours a week or better sitting in this office.
Hmm.
Recording with people that aren't my family. Spending time with
Hmm.
people that aren't my family,
Yeah.
and it takes a weight on it. And at the same time, these folks that share some of the stuff with me, you know the similarities between their life, my life, really it's the root of why I started the podcast and why I started the
Hmm.
business, and pivoted the business the way I have to try and help them, empower them, realize
Hmm.
that 98% of the time we are our own worst enemy.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I can't tell you how often, and the sheer volume of technicians who are complaining about pay, or complaining about environment, or complaining about this, and they're just generally complaining nonstop, and haven't figured out that they are the source of the bulk of the negativity, and a
Hmm.
mindset shift in the day
Hmm.
will allow them to get through the challenge that they're complaining about
Hmm.
more than anything.
Hmm.
And I think I said it today. I responded to somebody today. Is if you're in a situation where you're complaining, nothing's going to change.
Hmm.
If you're in a situation and you're doing everything you possibly can, and you're documenting what you're doing, and you're putting yourself in a position where you're positive, or you're doing everything you can to be positive. You're doing, a daily activity to try and improve your environment. You're doing a daily activity to try and improve communication. And after your own personal set of time, like whether it's a week, which is unrealistic, or whether it's
Yeah.
3 months or
Yeah.
6 months, to go, hey, after 6 months, I've put the last 6 months of effort in. I can go back into my journal and say, these are the things that I have done to work on myself, work on my behavior, work on my output, work on my productivity and my skills, and nothing's changed in the shop. If you are then bringing it to your leader and saying, hey, these are the things that I'm trying to better myself, so that I am better for myself and my family, but also maybe to be better part of the team. What are the things that we can do to work together on to try and improve the environment? And if you get nothing, why are you still there? And
Hmm.
that's don't if you do nothing, at least leave
Hmm.
and try and find the place that fits. If not, try
Yeah.
to try to do your self-reflection and try and work on
Mhm.
yourself, so that maybe you can then fit,
Yeah.
versus trying to
Exactly.
find a
Yeah.
place that you do fit.
Yeah.
So and like I keep saying, it's a lot of it comes back to I feel like a lot more of a therapist than I
right?
do anything
Yeah.
else. Just listening.
Hmm.
Um,
And I think
you know
that's
the
what a lot of guys in our industry need. We need someone that we can relate to because there's
hmm
no therapist on the planet that's ever spent time in a shop, knows what that actually feels like, right?
hmm
And then can go and actually kind of relate to what we do on a daily basis in a shop or whatever setting that we're in, right? And then even our home life after, right? It's a little bit different than, good Lord, a little bit different than white collar whatever jobs you might have, right? Our home life and our work life is completely different, right?
hmm
So yeah, it's kind of when I picked up your podcast, I was like, holy crap, this is a little bit of therapist, but can relate, and that's the biggest thing I think, right? Being able to relate to the things that we go through, right?
Big time. And that's and, you hit the nail on the head in terms of therapy. I
Mm-hmm.
regularly preach,
Mm-hmm.
perhaps you need to seek therapy. It's
Mm-hmm.
a challenge for me to say it because
Mm-hmm.
the majority of therapists aren't even going to have even remotely a clue what it's genuinely like. But the counterpoint to that is because they know nothing about what we actually experience, they're going to focus on the things that may be outside of that can help in it. It's the
Mm-hmm.
indirect stuff. And that's why, you know, I literally sat down with my son tonight. He had another meltdown tonight about
Mm-hmm.
something completely trivial.
Mm-hmm.
And it's no different. It doesn't matter whether you're 9 or 90, 29, 49, whatever. If something is affecting you emotionally, the rest of your everything, it doesn't matter what you're talking
Doesn't matter
about.
what
The
it's
rest of
it's
your
gonna
everything
affect you.
just
Yeah.
starts to dissolve,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the things that I learned in therapy, the things that my son has learned talking to a
Mm-hmm.
therapist, is the very first thing you need to do is pause and breathe. And when he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't pause and breathe, he sticks his foot in his mouth or he opens his
Mm-hmm.
mouth when he shouldn't, and he says stuff he
Yeah.
really shouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, when most of us make those same kinds of mistakes where,
Yeah.
you say
It's
that you
costing
aren't the reason why you just got
yeah.
fired. I just got fired because they think I have another comeback, and this. No, it's because you probably shot your mouth off for like the 10th time, and it just
Mm-hmm.
happened to be that this was during a time in the last 48 hours where you had a comeback, which whether it was your fault or not is irrelevant. It was another thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not just personality. Now it's a question of your ability.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when a leader can no longer trust you uh, unequivocally,
Mm-hmm.
and your communication is poor,
Mm-hmm.
bye.
Yeah.
That's it's
Yeah.
it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
So, and from a leader point of view, from my own leadership point of view, if I can't trust you unequivocally
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that the customer is safe,
Mm-hmm.
and you're shooting your mouth off, I'm not gonna waste my time.
Yeah.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
waste my time because you can shoot your mouth off if you want. I will do what I can to um, defer or
Mhm.
dissolve the situation as best as I can. But if you're
Mhm.
not prioritizing customer safety, that's
Yeah.
bye. Sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
And it goes a little
Or
bit
like
beyond even customer safety, right? It's everyone else on the road in our job too, right? And then making sure that even ourselves we get home, right? Because
mm-hmm,
they're today. So first day of class, and I have a student that says, "Hey, yeah, our shop's like the leader of OSHA violations," and made a joke about it. And I was like, "Wait a sec." I'm like, "You think that's funny?" I'm like, "So you're putting yourself in harm's way, and your employer's just, oh yeah, well, whatever. That lose a finger or whatever, it'll grow back, you know."
mm-hmm.
But to make a joke, so that's still in this day and age common place to make a joke about that. I still don't think that's appropriate, right? So, and I've
No.
been in this trade now for 20 years. I've seen a lot of accidents, and that could have been preventable. And guys not getting to go home that night because they got to spend a couple of days in the hospital, and then you still this young the guy today was, I think he's like 18 or 19 years old, and making a joke about his shop's your OSHA violations, right? So,
This is one of those moments where when you're 19, and I'm sorry, before I make that comment, I want you to do something for me just quick because this is something that came up last week when I was filming with the boys and I made a joke about it. And now that I've made a joke about it, I now think of it every time. Can I get you to do something? Look at the center of your camera and put your forehead in the center of the camera.
Okay. Yep.
You don't have to lean. If you want to move your chair, get centered or whatever. But I made a joke. Richard is the worst for it because he does one of these and he does this. And then he's completely out of frame. And the unfortunate thing is, when he does that, it's because the cogs are working so hard in his head, and he's about to say something really, really smart. Yeah. And he says something really smart, but he does it when he's here, and he's completely out of frame. So, just be in frame. So, OSHA violations are funny at 19. Because you don't know any better, you're stupid and immature and arrogant, and you know everything. So OSHA's funny. When you're 40, OSHA's not funny. OSHA violations are not fun anymore because like you just said, they're not fun anymore because in all likelihood you made the stupid mistakes when you were 19, 25, 29, and now you're missing parts of your finger, and now you have a bad back, and now your knee pops out every once in a while, right? They make great TikToks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
They don't make for a longevity in your career as a mechanic.
No.
So,
yeah.
Be safe out there, boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Be safe out there.
Be safe, yeah. You know, we still kind of joke about it because in our industry, OH&S says 50 pounds is the max that we can lift, right? Well, a brake drum on a Kenworth is 115 pounds. And guys are yarding those off and yarding them back on all day long, right? By themselves. So it's still, and then you wonder why at the end of the week, even though the guy's 20 years old, he's like, man, my back is tight, it hurts, what's going on? Well, it's because you've been doing brake jobs all week. Because you are a first-year apprentice, or a second-year apprentice, that's kind of the work that we give you, or guys get, right? But yeah, 115-pound drum. There's 6 drums on a tandem drive truck, and you're pulling those off and pulling them on all day long. So, yeah, that's still, there's no, and you're still expected to do that in what I think they say 20 minutes, half an hour aside, right? So you're moving. You're moving, right? So, and I've done it.
Yeah, unless you're at a shop. So this is contextual. 2010, working at the Ben store as Tower and the gentlemen that are doing the run flat changeovers on MLs and GLs. So GLs back then, and folks that are working at Mercedes stores can correct me, but those old models, they were 110 wheel and tire per corner, 110 pounds wheel and tire. So some of the stores had wheel lifts, some didn't. And you can lift those correctly, air quotes correctly. But when you're doing 2.5 sets, 3 sets of those a day, so you're lifting, what's that, 1,500, 1,600 pounds within a day, and you're doing the squats, you're doing the deadlifts, you're doing the shoulder presses that requires to get them on, and they're not exactly the easiest thing to line up, line up your drum or not your drum, my goodness. Line up your rotor and hub and wheel all in the same, because you've got, it's just, that's not uncommon. And there are lots of shops out there that don't have wheel lifts, and they're they're mechanics. Yeah, they'll lift it. They're strong. Strong backs. Well, not strong backs for long.
No. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm thankful
that even doing tires as an older mechanic, as I aged into doing mechanics, doing tires, I'm thankful that I wasn't in automotive anymore doing seasonal changeovers, because doing tires in tire season on motorcycles is not the same as doing tires during tire season in automotive.
Yeah.
Right? It's not. I have 2 to do versus 1. The difference being is it'll take me an hour and a half. You know, an hour and a half is my full re for 1.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If maybe a little bit longer if it's a fully dressed bagger.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not light, and it's not nice to get them off the way we have to get them off through the lift and so on and so forth. It's just super fucking awkward at arm's length. But I'm glad I did it once. You know, every 2, because I was never on a bike for just tires. Like, it was so rare that I was doing just tires. I was doing tires and pads at least. Tires, pads, oil change, maybe brake fluid. So I would probably be on a bike the majority of the time during tire season. I was on a bike for a day, for the most part, like 6 to 7 hours, give or take, solid.
Mm-hmm.
But 2 tires, maintenance, maybe a repair, maybe some pads.
Yeah.
But on during tire season, on tires, I recall stories where I think I did the math, and I think if I recall my very first year turning wrenches as a young buck, I think I did 2,500 tires.
Yeah.
25, and this is back when it wasn't rim on tires. It was tire off, and 2,500 sets, give or take, because we were just getting in. The store was just getting into doing rim and tire packages, so we were blowing them at the door like crazy, stupid prices. So I think I don't know how many we pre-built, but we chalkers the shop, and it was some stupid number. So anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
We're getting into the weeds before we even really start. We're into the weeds.
Yeah. No, I hear that because like our industry, so commercial vehicle inspections, right, yearly. So there's a shop that I still part of part time, slowly, less and less, because school's taking it up, and then I have my own business, and we can talk about that later. But we get a couple of young guys in there, 1st and 2nd year apprentices, and they do CVIPs all day long, right? So trailer comes in, wheels off, drums off for measurements and inspection, then wheels and drums back on. Unless they fail. If they fail, then they're throwing new drums or whatever on, right? But they're doing 4 or 5, maybe inspections a day in an 8-hour day. And that's all they're doing, pulling wheels, pulling drums, pulling wheels, pulling drums, making measurements, throwing them back on, right? And so the shop is probably doing 100, 200 CVIPs on trailers alone in a year, right?
Wow.
So, and it's just 2-3 guys, and now I'm at a point, if I'm in there and they hand me an inspection, it's like I gotta pull wheels and drums. Oh, right? You get your head into it, right? Because I'm like, work is work. I'm one of those guys where work is work. Doesn't matter what it is. Like, I'll still go do clutches, whatever. It doesn't matter. Clutches, diffs, it doesn't matter. So, but still, it's, you look at it, you're like, holy crap. And then you see the young guys and they're doing those all day long, right? And it's still.
You think back, it makes you think back. Go back 20 years. It's like, what was it like when did I have to do this bullshit, or was my bullshit easier?
Actually, I think my bullshit was easier. Because I think back then it was wheels off every 2 years. We were allowed to do what we call cam rotations. So you just had to wrench over the slack adjuster, and depending on how far it rotated, you would take a measurement. So if it was 60 degrees, then I think we would then pull wheels and drums and measure one or the other. If you were past 60 degrees, because then it meant either drums or shoes were worn, right? Because at 120 degrees, it was complete failure on one or the other. So we knew we had to pull. So back then, at least we could do cam rotations, but we can't do that anymore. Not allowed to, right? So now it's completely wheels on, or wheels off, drums off, right, for inspections. So,
Okay.
yeah.
And I didn't know that it was that, that there was a previous, and now that there is a requirement. Good to know. Good to know for folks that, and to think there are some young mechanics out there. It's like, I want to get into working on heavy truck, heavy coach. I want to work on buses, or I want to work on rigs, or I want to work on this, that, the other. There's a lot of dues to pay, and it's not. it's hard for me to say dues to pay anymore, but at the same time, it's still it's like going the description of going to college, and I think I'm not remember what movie it's quoted from. I've never seen the whole movie, but it's Stallone quoting, college is not to really learn. University isn't necessarily really learn. It's to show a prospective employer that you went to the same place for 4 years. You reasonably showed up on time. You reasonably well did the work. You did the work to a satisfactory completion level as requested and followed instruction, and you did it consistently for 4 years.
Yeah.
Forget about what you learned or didn't learn or how much you partied, whatever. You followed that for 4 years. That's kind of what the first year to 2 years for a lot of dealership apprentice learning is can you prove that you are someone who is trustable, who is responsible, who is responsible enough with someone else's life in their hands? Because when you're pulling drums and shoes and tires and stuff off of trailers, off of trucks, off of cars, whatever, when you put them back on, if you don't put them back on properly and torque everything down properly and you do your due diligence and make your notes and so forth, if you don't do it properly, maybe a lot of people might die. Because, you blow up a motor, somebody, if it blows up in the middle of 401.
In our industry, you blow up an engine, you get promoted, so.
Like, blowing a motor or blowing up a tranny, yes, really bad things can happen, but wheels off, really bad things happen. So it's a fundamental paying of dues and it's not so much paying of dues, it's verifying accountability and responsibility. Now there are some folks out there that say, we shouldn't do that and you should be given good work right off the bat to get them tasting good stuff right away. And I don't disagree with that, but I think it needs to be, like many things, it needs to be in moderation. I'm very glad my own mechanic upbringing was a mixture of the both. It wasn't heavy in the jammy learning. It was bits and pieces. It was like once a week for a while, and then it became more and more. Because we need to be taught, and we need to lay the foundation. Like I said today, without a foundation of trust, you can't build success. Like that's very important.
Yeah.
So let's now that we've been covering a lot of bases right off the hop, let's dive into some primaries. So Brent, what got you into automotive fundamentally? What was the catalyst?
I think so. My dad, we kind of, the way I grew up, he was always kind of tinkering on something. He kind of had a background in a little bit of automotive, a little bit of heavy duty. And then I think I went to high school in Ontario. Automotive class kind of really got me rolling. And then I didn't do too well in high school. And then the second I got out of high school, Southern Ontario, went and worked in a steel or galvanizing factory. And then worked there with my dad. He was a crane operator. And I think it was right around when I was 24. My dad's like, you need to get the fuck out of here. You're wasting your life, right? And then I was like, okay, so what do I do? So started, trying to do some job searches or whatever. It was 2005. Alberta was booming, right? So I just made a few phone calls. Yeah, when do you want to start? You can start tomorrow, right? And so I moved out here, then 2005, 2006, and started my apprenticeship and as in heavy duty. And ever since then, it's just been it's been a good ride. I mean, I can't complain, right? Love it. And now I'm an instructor at NATE, so Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, probably Canada's largest training facility for skilled trades, right? So I think our program alone puts out, I want to say 1,200 apprentices a year, right?
I would say that I don't know whether you're bigger, quote unquote, than Georgian College is for putting out folks in the trade, because Georgian does all of automotive, does automotive.
So I'm just thinking
automotive
heavy duty world,
Oh, heavy duty, for sure.
Yeah.
Purely and simply for heavy duty, absolutely. NATE does
Yeah.
I'm trying to think numbers wise where there was about 30 per class, level 1, level 2, level 3 for automotive. In pure automotive, in the block release, they have about 30 in class for the day release that go once a week. And I think they do 4 sessions a year for automotive, so we'll call that, 90 every 4 months. Oh yeah, you know what? You would have to combine all of aviation, automotive, even the head truck coach, because I don't think truck coach is that big formally, because most of the truck coach here in Ontario is led by the independent, not the independent, my goodness, led by brands like Volvo. Volvo has a very big program through Georgian College, but the Chrysler program and the Chevy program is big at Georgian College down in Scarborough, and they're moving, and they've got the aviation camp there too.
One instructor, and he did his 310T, because that's what it's called in Ontario, right?
Yeah.
The heavy-duty trucking coach, and he did his at Mohawk College in Hamilton. And he said when he
it's a much smaller college down there, but they're I think they only do truck coach and automotive. I don't think they do anything else there.
Yeah, he said there was 9 people in his class almost every year that he went through, right? And I was like, holy crap, when I came through in Alberta every year, it was 24 of us, 24. And I think starting next year, in our full-time program, they want to put 32 into a class. Yeah.
That's going to be tough for you teachers, man. Like, there was 12, I think there was 12 of us when we started my motorcycle level 1 back in the fall of last year, which I'm obviously not going to go back for my level 2 now, but my level 1, there was 12 of us that were theoretically supposed to show up on day 1. Only 9 showed up on day 1, and there was only 8 of us that followed through to the end of the term after 8 weeks.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And one individual missed, I think, 12 days, so I think he attendance failed the course.
So for us,
because I think it's 10%. You can't miss more than 8 days.
Can't miss more than 8 days, so that's way better than out here. So can't miss more than 12 hours. Or 18 hours, sorry. So 3 days. So you miss 3 days, you're out. Yeah.
That's tough.
In 8 weeks.
Right? Because I would imagine some of that stuff you could definitely make back. But 3 days? Only 3 days? 3 days. Now is it 8 weeks?
8 weeks, yep.
3 days and 8 weeks, so 3 days of 40. That's challenge.
Well, and the big caveat is because it's taxpayer dollar, right? Because it's like a 3-to-1 ratio. So like if a student comes in, they spend I think it's $1,200 now. So then taxpayer money makes up the rest of that. So I think it's around $5,000 a seat, somewhere on there, just under there, right? To come through apprenticeship. So that's the big thing, right? So if you're gonna come in and there's no screwing around, it's 8 weeks. Like I went through the program, and I think because I did the 3-year on-road, so first, second, and what they consider fourth period. So I have my on-road, heavy-duty, red seal, right? I don't think I missed any time, but there was guys that had to be taken aside and like, listen, like you miss 1 more minute, you're toast, you're out, right? Because they were right on that cusp, right? And then even if
I think they have to get that, because there's a line. It's one thing. If you miss a day, right? You miss a day. It's not the end of the world if you miss a day. And you're right. Even in Ontario, it's the same thing. It's heavily tax funded. In automotive and motorcycle were the same price. It was $400 for the 8 weeks. The rest of it's covered. Basically for the amount that is even at 3-to-1. At 3-to-1, we're basically paying for ourselves through our own income tax. Yeah. So we're paying for ourselves. We're just paying for it in a different way. But I understand the concept behind this is actually federally funded. So if you're going to go through all this process and take up a seat where somebody else would be here, you're literally taking money out of somebody else's pocket to waste their time.
Yeah. And same thing in Ontario. You guys get unemployment insurance for your 8 weeks, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was. Now, it took me This time around, it took me almost 9 months to get my unemployment. So that's a whole story. You know what? I'm gonna tell it, for fuck's sakes.
Yeah, do it.
So the first time around, so level 1, 2, 3, I did 2003, 2004, 2005. So a long time ago.
Yeah.
The first time you go unemployment as a mechanic, back then, it is the same rules apply. You get to lose a week. So you're going for 8. You're not going to get paid for 8. You're going to get paid for 7. Like, okay, price to pay. And you do that every time you go on unemployment for trade school. All right, again, price that you have to pay. It's calculated at 55% of your last 12 weeks of earnings. It's like, okay, as an apprentice, that really sucks. Like if you genuinely have some bills to pay as an apprentice and you go from making whatever you're making, which is not much, to 55% of that, well, that sucks. It's awful. The first time around, it took 4 months. I think I want to say, so I went in the fall, September, October, and I got paid. It was almost March break when I got paid the first time around. Second time around, it was like 2 months, not a big deal. Second and third time around, 2 months, not a big deal. Things processed, blah, blah, blah. You start, basically, I was getting money. As I was going back to work, I started to also get my unemployment money. So it was like, oh, hey, I got all this money.
Right.
You know, young kid didn't really know shit about shit.
Yeah.
Right? But this time around is a little different. You know, being, 38 years old at the time, with wife, with child, with mortgage, and being told, okay, I was making a full-time wage and now I'm making 55% of that wage. Okay, that sucks. But I know how this works. Like, what do I have to do to make sure that I get paid? Like, what has to happen? Like, well, okay, make sure everything's filled out properly. Okay, here, day one, here you go.
Exactly.
Like, I'm theoretically a much more responsible adult now. Like, okay, everything day one, I didn't have any issues.
Yeah.
I was in first in line. I was Johnny on the spot. Like, this needs to be right. And I was there, and we filled out the paperwork. It's like, okay, this is all great. Oh, now you're commuting. Okay, awesome. You get the opportunity to apply for transportation bonus. It's like, okay, awesome, because it's no longer 58 cents a liter. It's now $1.70 a liter for me to commute down here. 2 hours every day.
Right now?
It's $1.73 right now.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I feel
Canadian, so it's funny money for any of the Americans listening right now. You can all have a good laugh. But
so we're $1. I just gassed up yesterday. We're $1.39.
Yep, that's what 2 provinces away will do.
Yeah.
So went through the process, and 2 weeks go by, don't think anything of it. 3 weeks go by, nothing. 4 weeks go by, I get a random check for $700. Like, okay, cool. This doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. It has. I could not come up with I could not make any sense of $700. Like, no division of 55% of anything that I could come up with made any sense. It's like, okay, cool. I got paid my transportation all in a lump sum, because there's no way it's $700 a week.
Yeah.
So I make a phone call, make another phone call, another phone call. There's only so many hours in the day where I'm supposed to be at class where I can call. So it's like, it's lunchtime. It's like, I'm calling on my lunch. I pick up the phone as soon as I'm done to start lunch, and wait on hold. Click, gotta go back to class. Pick up, nope, gotta go back to class. So I did this for like 4 weeks, trying to get through. Never got through. I finally got through. It was my last week, and it's like, oh yeah, sometimes things take time. It's like, well, I've been not getting paid now for 8 weeks. I have a family. I have a mortgage payment. I have food. I have car payment. These are real world mechanic problems. I need to get paid.
Yeah.
It's like, well, these things take time. You have to wait. It's like, can you figure out whether it's in process or things take time. So I literally got the same. And so I called back probably 4 more times, give or take, over the course of the next month, because obviously last week of school, next week I go back to work and I start getting paid again. So life is going to be very, very, very hard for the next 2 months, and we'll figure it out. My wife and I will figure it out. We'll tighten our belts and we'll make it work. Thank God we saved for Christmas prior to me going to school.
Yeah.
But we made it work.
Yeah.
And then I made a series of phone calls over the course of January, February, March. I think finally in May, I finally got through in May, and I finally got through to somebody who would actually say, "Hey, can I talk to your manager, please? This is not acceptable anymore. There's almost $4,000 that I should have been paid during that period of time that I haven't been compensated for, and I've been paid something that I don't understand what it is." Oh, let me look. It's like, I've heard this before. Can you get your manager, please? So finally, I got somebody on that did their due diligence and went back and said, "Oh yeah, you wouldn't have gotten paid." What do you mean I wouldn't have gotten paid? Yeah, there's something on your account that you needed to do reporting during your trade school, which doesn't make any sense, because if you're going to trade school, there's a little checkbox that your person would have checked. You're going to school. There's no need to report. You've said you're not working and you're not claiming anything. Obviously, if you did work and you did make money during that time, that's fraudulent. It's like, I understand that. I didn't work. So, okay. It was a little checkbox. You were not supposed to do reporting. You're not supposed to have claimed reporting. You would never have gotten paid. So I'm very thankful for that last individual that I spoke to, but it took me more hours than I would care to admit. And we work when they work.
Yeah.
They don't work late. They don't work early. They work when the rest of us who work full-time jobs as mechanics work.
Yeah. And
we don't get 3 hours we don't get 3 hours in the middle of the day to wait on hold for someone to finally come to the phone.
Yeah. Yeah. If I have 3 hours in the middle of the day, I don't want to be on the phone, right? And what do we get at work? Two
now,
15-minute
somebody will say,
breaks.
"I've been on hold for 3 hours talking to engineering," but that's not the same
We're getting
thing.
paid to do it, right? So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
3 hours on hold with Eaton. Oh man, I remember those days. Oh yeah. But yeah, like, what do we get? 2 15-minute coffee breaks and a half-hour lunch usually. What are we supposed to do in that amount of time? I can barely feel like I've eaten something and had a decent break before it's time to get back to throwing wrenches again, right? So.
and as a young mechanic, we don't really stop. It's did you actually stop, or did you just take 8 smoke breaks and eat your sandwich with dirty fingers while working?
Yeah. Yeah.
For the most part, that's what most of us now. Oh, I don't smoke, or I don't drink coffee, or I don't eat sandwiches, or yes, you did.
Yeah.
You even if you didn't smoke, you probably smoked because your baymate probably smoked a pack a day, so you were still smoking a pack a day.
Oh yeah. I remember trying to quit when I worked at one of the dealerships here, and I worked night shift. So like 4
that's the worst.
4 p.m. to midnight, and then we'd always work 3 or 4 hours overtime, so it was almost like a 4 to 4, right? And it was a night shift because it's 4 days on, 4 days off, right? So I might have given away what dealership it was, but either way, I remember trying to quit on night shift, and the guys that I worked with on that shift, they were all pack and a half, a day guys, right? So you're trying to quit, and I'm trying to slim down. Maybe I'll smoke 10 today. No, I'll smoke 10 on coffee break. One, just one after another, right?
I never formally worked evenings like that. I never worked like a night shift on the bench, but for all the years I worked at the Dodge store in the city on the bench, there was seldom a day where I didn't stay past 6-7 o'clock. And there were nights when I was working on something ridiculous, and this is back again. I reference the same bloody thing because it was hell on earth. It was the 2010, 2011 Jeep Grand Cherokees with a diesel in it, so I was trying to get it finished up because nobody wanted to do it, so I was doing it, whatever. But 11 o'clock at night, smoking, drinking coffee, and thank God there was a Tim Hortons literally around the block, so you go a block away, grab 4 Tim Hortons coffees, so you didn't have to go out again.
Yeah.
Microwave one when you need one. And
yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Now, were you at the shop where there were guys that would walk in at 7 a.m. and they'd walk in with a tray of coffees for themselves? They'd sit it down on their bench, and they take the first one for the day, and then at break they take the second one, and at lunch they take the third one, and at break again they take the fourth one. They didn't need 5 because at the end of the day they just go get another coffee.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, I worked, and I was like that for a little bit too because we were so busy. I remember, yeah, walking in, and I'd probably have two extra large double doubles, and a sugar free monster because you got to balance that out, right? And and
Now,
then
did you start that way? Did you start with double doubles, or did you just start with heavy sugar like I did?
double doubles. I remember being in high school. I remember my dad picking like he worked night shift, so he would pick me up and then like come home from work and drive me to school, and then I would take the city bus home, right? And I remember we'd stop and get a coffee in the morning, and then the old man was just like, "You're getting a double double. That's it, right?" And that was it, right? Whether I liked it or not, right? I always felt like it needed more sugar back then, but I think that kind of just and that was back when like Tim Hortons coffee was good. Now it's like having Tim Hortons coffee. I'm like, what is this? Slop water. Go get me a Starbucks, right? So yeah,
I can't do it. I
yeah,
can't do the Starbucks.
yeah.
I can't do it. It's Tim Hortons or nothing for the most part. But I did not start with a double double. I started
No.
with 4x4s.
Oh,
I
wow.
started, yeah. I
Ah,
believe me, I didn't like coffee. And I don't think even
yeah,
today, I don't think I really like coffee.
yeah,
But I started with 4x4s, and I finally made it to triple triples. And then it took me probably a decade to get down to double doubles.
yeah, yeah. And so now
Like,
if I make coffee at home, it's black, and then if I go to Starbucks, you're gonna laugh, but it's a venti vanilla sweet cream cold brew, light ice, and 2 shots of espresso added to it. So
that's
it's
almost
kind
as
of,
bad. That's worse than my wife. My wife is grande, no fat, no water, no foam, extra hot chai tea latte,
oh, wow.
and depending on the day, an extra shot of vanilla.
Oh yeah. So
That
that's
is,
just like
it's a lot.
pretty much right off the menu, and then the 2 extra shots of espresso. So
Yeah,
I worked it out. It's about three. I think it's about 300 milligrams of caffeine. Yeah,
that's an energy drink.
yeah, right. So yeah,
That's an energy drink.
yeah, yeah. And then I always get
Like,
a look. They're like, "You adding espresso to just a cold brew?" I'm like, "Yep." They're like, "So that's like adding coffee to coffee." I'm like, "Oh yeah, yeah. That's how I like it."
let's
Now it's
reference Dennis Leary. Stop putting the shit in the coffee.
yeah,
It's
right.
not. It's
Yeah,
like coffee flavored coffee is
yeah,
literally what you're making. It's just
yeah,
right
yeah.
out of his. What was that show? What was that name of that? I want to go back and watch that again. I've literally brought that up in conversation like 3 times in the past week. What was the name of
Dennis
his that stand
Leary's.
up routine?
Oh,
The Inner Thoughts or something like that.
oh man, that's going back on.
Oh, this is. I'll have to look at it after. I'll have to look at it. But that was just the.
That's when he's on
He's
stage
referencing
smoking the
pulling.
whole time, right?
Literally smoking nonstop.
Yeah,
He's literally
nonstop.
smoking nonstop. He's pacing the stage, smoking nonstop. He's talking about 8 balls. He's talking about kids pulling up their pants. He's talking about the kid behind the 7-Eleven that had a tongue piercing so big that he couldn't keep his tongue in his mouth.
Yeah,
And I remember the phrase "if maple nut crunch" because he couldn't say maple nut crunch properly because the
yeah,
tongue stud was so big in his mouth.
yeah. I
Oh my
remember.
goodness,
Yeah, I remember that. I remember because how old was I when that came out? Oh man,
that was a long time ago, man.
that was late '90s, was it not?
Got to be late 90s, easily 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah. Oh wow.
Easily 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Anyway, I
Oh,
digress.
yeah.
So you spent your old man basically kicked you out without doing the formal kick out. He kicked you out because he wanted you to be better, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
And you spent a lot of time fixing stuff, and now
Mm.
you fix stuff for so long that you're now teaching stuff to the young folks coming
Mm.
in at NAIT.
Mm-hmm.
What happened along there for you to figure out that you want to teach? Like, what was the catalyst? What was the things that happened? Like, is there some stories in there for
I think
teaching
there's
while you
a.
were drenching, or?
Yeah, exactly. I think it was, and I see it more and more, and I hear about it more and more from students now. It's a lack of mentorship that's out there right now, right? And I look back on my experiences kind of going through the trade, and it seems like every 3 or 4 years I had a career change, wheeling the toolbox out because of whatever reason, and then moving on to something else, right? And I think that's kind of what it was. It was like, well, if you're not going to teach me anything, then why the fuck am I here, right? and I'm smart enough to figure it out myself. But there's times where it's that little bit of like arrogance kind of gets under your skin, where you go and ask a question. It's like, hey, what about what if we try it like this? And it's like, well, that's not gonna work. What are you stupid? And you're like, okay, well, whatever. And then it turns out that it was their idea and it worked, right? But it was you had come up first with that kind of thing. So I think it was kind of that, and I think a kind of a little bit of a luck of the draw, because it was I applied for the job, didn't think I would ever get it, and I get a phone call for an interview, and then I get a phone call saying, hey, when do you want to start? And it's like, holy crap. So
bang, 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 bang.
bang, 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 right? So yeah, I applied for it in the spring, I think right before COVID happened. And then I didn't get it was like January, February, right before COVID, and then I get a phone call in September saying, hey, would you still be interested? We know you applied for this back then. I was like, yeah, let's give it a shot. So went through the whole interview process, and then started started during COVID, November 2020, right? And then it's weird because it feels like that's kind of what I've wanted to do for a long time, right? And it actually feels like good getting up and going to work, and knowing that that people rely on you for what experience and knowledge you do have, right? So, kind of feels like that's where I'm supposed to be,
That's awesome.
So back
that's awesome.
Pulling wrenches and that kind of stuff. I always was. I don't think I was like an overachiever, but I always got the job done, right? And never really felt like. Looking back, never really felt like I really excelled, but probably because I was like, if I'm really good at it, and you know how dealership times are, right? Because I was in 2 truck dealerships. It's like if you get really good at it, they're going to be like, okay, well then you can do it faster and faster and faster. And it's like, well, I don't want to work that hard, to be honest, right? So, because you look at like how, so like for instance, so the first time like a guy's given a clutch to do 18-speed clutch, right? So he'll probably be around the 24 hour mark. And then you can, as you do 50 of them, you're probably down around the 6 to 8 hour mark, right? But at 6 to 8 hours, you're moving, right? And everything's heavy, nothing's light. You're still in tight spaces, but 6 to 8 hours, and most companies are still charging $14.20.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's like, if you're charging that much,
this is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. Because it's an hourly shop, right? You might be hustling. Mm-hmm. You got paid your 24 hours when it took you 24 hours. You got paid your 24 hours if it took you 6. There is no incentive in an hourly shop for you to get down to 6.
Yeah.
And this is the discussion that I'm openly having, and I openly have with anybody that wants to debate about flat rate. Marshall.
Yeah.
Marshall. Flat rate sucks, changed my mind, but at the same time,
it does.
Where is the beyond personal ambition, right? Beyond personal ambition, there is no drive for the average human being to go, if I get paid for 24 hours and it takes me 24 hours and nobody says shit for me when I take 24 hours, what is the incentive for me to do it in less time? Mm-hmm. Beyond personal ambition without a reward for doing it productively, does it ever happen faster? Can it be done in 8? Yes. You've said yourself in this particular circumstance, we're hypothetically speaking. But if it can be done in 8, why does it take 24?
Yeah.
It takes 24 because there's no incentive to do it in 8. The issue is, in flat rate, we get so heavily penalized when it takes us 24, and we get penalized for so long that it takes us 24 that we don't get to 8. We can't afford to get to the point 8, and usually it doesn't pay, right? This is the biggest challenge in flat rate, is it doesn't necessarily pay properly right off the bat. It usually you have to do it 50 times at a bullshit time in order to get to a point where this now customer pay, and now you're doing it in the 14 hours and it pays 14 hours. Or you're getting paid 14 hours and that's when it's taking you 8. The challenge is finding the offset, the delta and I've talked about this regularly, the delta difference, your net positive over a period of time. Your 24 hour, it takes you 24 hours and you get paid 8. That 16-hour difference is your learning curve.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you have to do personally so that you can minimize your 16-hour loss as a learning tool to get to the next level? Again, as somebody threw out the other day, we're talking about MPIs, and it's against the law to force an employee to do something for free. Well, if they're hourly, it doesn't matter.
No.
But it does matter if they're flat rate. The challenge is, and I bring this up, regularly. I've been doing MPIs for 20 plus years. I've been doing them for free for 20 plus years. It wasn't until somebody coined the phrase MPI, and somebody somewhere said, we want to make sure they get done on every one, so we're going to pay them 0.1 or 0.2 to do it. And somebody went, we should get paid for this. That now it's a problem. And it's been a problem for a while. But I didn't know that there was such a thing as a quote-unquote MPI sheet, because we didn't have sheets 25 years ago, 20 years ago, where I worked. And it wasn't until I started talking to dealerships in the U.S., and really, really, really big stores in Canada in the last 5 years that I knew that the MPI was a literal check sheet thing. It was just common practice. You check every car out, stem to stern. You write a shopping list, good, bad, or otherwise. It could have one thing on it. It could have 100 things on it. You write everything down, A, because of safety, B, because if you miss anything, that's your ass. And C, if you do miss something, that's an opportunity that you've missed to upsell.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah. That's just good technician practice. And we've been doing them for free. And me specifically, and all the technicians that I've ever worked with, were doing them for free. And we've been doing them that way for a long damn time. So, again, debate, it's a philosophical debate. Truly, it's a philosophical debate.
And for every of these MPIs you might do, we've got something similar in the heavy duty world, on the trucking world, quality inspection reports, or whatever you want to call them, right? For every one of those, so for every 100 you do, you might get one customer that says, okay, do everything on the list, or do the one thing on the list, or do this. That's it. So you're doing all these inspections for what payout, right? Where's the payout for these inspections? Because, hey, I'm going to do this inspection, hand it to the customer, and I think 90% of the time the customer's going to go, whatever, right? Fix it when it's broke, right?
The challenge, and this is where the challenge, okay? And again, I'm talking about delta positive here. What's the net positive on free work? And maybe it's not free work. Maybe perhaps the dealership you work for or the small independent shop you work for charges for the MPI. It is what it is, whatever. But we're looking at the net positive. So two things have to happen. A, you have to do the MPI properly. Whether you get paid for it or not is irrelevant. You have to do the MPI properly. You have to do it on every single vehicle, whether it's a truck, whether it's a rig, whether it's a bus, whether it's a car, motorcycle, whatever. You have to do the MPI. You have to do it on every single time, and you have to do it properly. The secondary problem is, which is a really big problem, which is what I brought up on Friday this past week, is most of the time dealerships have a sales problem in the service drive. Our good friend Zach Perkel shared some information with me. I won't go into detail what it is, but specifically his advisors in his service drive have closing targets. They are coached on a regular basis on what is and what isn't acceptable. They are coached on a regular basis on how to subvert objections and how to handle certain things. They have processes in place from start to finish in terms of the meet and greet, in terms of the walk around, in terms of how to present certain things in certain ways, and so on and so forth. They have processes in place to help the service advisors close business. If you're in a dealership, whether it's a rig or a fleet or mobile or a car, if you don't have processes for both the technicians and the service advisors, you're going to lose on those MPIs, period. End of chat. Because the service advisors or whoever's selling the work needs to close. They need to close business. If they're not closing business successfully on a consistent enough basis, the people doing the MPIs, especially if they're doing them for free or repair, forget about that, repair inspections or diagnostic inspections, if they're not closing on business, faith is lost on the shop floor to do the job and inspection properly, or at all for that matter. A consistent number in the service industry is somewhere, a consistent target to shoot for is about 40% closing. If you have a service advisor or a service writer that is consistently closing 40% of the time of whatever you sell, or at least a portion of what you're selling 40% of the time, that's a good number. The delta that occurs in terms of technician pay, especially flat rate, that occurs when you have service advisors that are closing that high is so obscene that you will stop complaining about any free work. It's obscene. You have technicians out there that are closing in on, you know, 150, 175, $200,000 US a year in flat rate. Flat rate. And they are doing free MPIs. So you can't, you got to be very self-reflective. For anybody that's listening to this and you happen to be flat rate and you happen to be in a dealership doing free MPIs, I'm not condoning free MPIs. I'm also not condoning paying for them. I am, this is the only thing that you will probably ever hear me say where I walk the fence. It's completely determinant on the individual turning the wrench and the business that runs. If you want to pay for it, up to you. If you don't want to pay for it, up to you. I see the benefit on both sides of that coin. But let me tell you, the shops that charge for MPIs are not making the money that the shops that are doing MPIs for free. Hands down, the shops doing the MPIs for free are making way more money. The technicians are making way more money as a delta positive, and the shops are making way more money delta positive because the focus is on the customer safety. Period, bar none. Even if it's just cannon fodder conversation, truly, and somebody's actually greedy, fine. At the end of the day, that shop is going to make way more money long term because they're doing free MPIs, because it's safety first.
Neat.
So that's my little rant on that.
Yeah. It's a weird thing to think about flat rate in the heavy duty world. There's one shop in Edmonton, and they are a flat rate truck shop, and they've been a flat rate truck shop for well over a decade or more, but they're the only shop in town. And I had to go into that shop when I worked at one dealership. We got called over to, I think, we were cutting counter bores in that one, right? And that shop was a dungeon, and there was parts everywhere, spare parts, used parts, everything. You were stepping over stuff. How trucks even got in some bays at that point in time was insane. But you could definitely tell, like, this is a flat rate shop, right? You guys are here to get in, get out, and I don't think there was no cleanup afterwards. It was, we'll figure it out when it gets too big of a pile, right? And yeah, we went over there. We're like, we're supposed to open up an engine and cut counter bores in this mess. Like, this is right. But then you walk in some other hourly shops, and you've got guys that there's nothing to do. Guess we'll just wash this bay down, clean stuff up, empty some garbages, and everything's looking tight and clean, right? So I don't know if that's how it is maybe in the automotive world. If flat rate shops tend to be a little bit more chaotic and mess.
It's only chaotic if they don't have a good leader.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I have walked into shops with 40 to 50 technicians in them, and it's a purely flat rate shop, and it's immaculate. All you have to do is ask anybody in there and go, who cleans the shop? It's like, we do.
Oh, wow.
You're flat rate, though. You don't get paid to clean. It's like, nope. You making good money? Yeah, I made 16 hours today. 5 o'clock.
Wow. Nice.
So you have a shop that produces, you have a team that works together, and you have a high-value leader leading that knows how to lead. Nobody is going to chirp to clean. Nobody's going to chirp to clean. And the ones that say, "Oh, I'm not cleaning," it doesn't make financial sense for me to clean. You're right. Between the hours of roughly 9 and 5 p.m., it makes absolutely no sense for you to clean. But guess what? In a shop that's run by a high-value leader, you're going to keep your stuff tidy. You're going to put your tools away after every job. You're going to make sure that everybody has what they need around you because they're helping you make 16 hours in a day. There are porters who move parts. There are cleaners who clean up spills. There are tools and processes and people in place to make sure that the stuff stays clean throughout the day, because the only way that a shop stays immaculate is if it's always immaculate. You have somebody who is full-time cleaning. You have apprentices doing full-time cleaning, or you have a porter who literally their entire day is to keep the shop clean. You know, when you have 40 techs in a shop, you can afford to do that. It's a lot harder to do in a 10-bay shop. But a 10-bay shop is a lot easier to keep clean than a 40-bay shop.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Sure. So it's mindset and leadership. If you have leadership capable of leading and providing the tools, resources, and customers so that the technician team can succeed, a high-value leader removes all reasons for excuses. They're removing all reasons for excuses. When the service drive is full of closing sensational monsters who can close 40% of the time on everything that walks through that service drive, there is so much money on every single one of those tickets that coming through the shop, there is nothing to complain about. When I hear technicians in coaching and online, and I see forums and I see on my LinkedIn when they comment very, very negative stuff, because you know what, complaint happens, especially on folks like Russell who's moved shops enough times that he should have gotten a good leader by now and still hasn't. That's indicative of the industry. When you move around, high value leaders change your life. Right? They completely change your life. If you've moved around enough times and you haven't had one, you know you haven't had one. And the challenge is the high value leaders are so unicorn. They're more unicorn than a good technician. Yeah. So when you have all of those pieces, tools, and people in place, you remove all excuses. There's no excuse. There's no excuse for you to not have your bay clean at the end of the day when you just made 12 hours in 7. Right? You work on 4 cars and make 12 hours because the average is 3 hours a ticket. And you're making that, and it's like, oh, well, that happens every once in a while. It's like, no, when I talk about CP warranty labor mix. Labor mix is a really big deal, and I don't think a big enough deal is made out of it for leaders, because leaders typically aren't compensated to make sure that the labor mix is appropriate for the shop to succeed.
Yeah, but we used to see that all the time, where guys, because our big thing is efficiency, right? So you got a guy that's constantly doing warranty stuff because he's good at doing warranty work. His efficiency is probably going to be 60-70%. But then you got a guy that's constantly doing retail and he's up around that 90 to 110. And then till when it comes time for things get slow, who's going to go out the door? Your really good warranty guy or your really good retail guy? Well, probably your really good warranty guy, right? And we know warranty times are shit in this industry, right? Because I don't know how they're developed. Pull a magic number out of a hat and then that's what you got to make. Like it's ridiculous. But yeah, I've seen it a few times in the dealerships where really good warranty guys come slow time.
Go out the door.
Out the door.
And this is why I keep preaching. Yeah. You have to track your own. You have to track and document your own labor mix as much as you track your own hours. Because when folks complain about how much warranty they're doing, it's like, oh, I do warranty 70% of the time or 80%. Like all I'm doing is warranty all the time. Well, actually write it down and do the math. And every time somebody's come into coaching and said, I do nothing but warranty, and my warranty's got to be this, and it's like, send me your doc, send me a report, remove any dealership information, any private information that might happen to be on there. Remove it, send me the information, I'll do the calculations myself. And every time I do it, every single time I do it, it's like 80% or better CP. Like almost all the time, it's 80% or better CP. The best shops that I have done data analysis on for labor mix or efficiency, I've done it a bunch of times now. I've done it a bunch of times for free. I'm not going to be doing, anybody that's listening is like, oh, he's doing it for, no, I'm not doing it for free anymore. But the times that I've done it up to this point, the best shops making the most amount of money, way more gross than you could ever imagine. It's obscene because they're looking for the 1% gains. Best shops are doing 90% CP, 10% warranty internal. And the few techs that happen to be on the roster that aren't 90% are the ones that are solely to do internal. So they are full-time used car recon, or they're full-time PDI, or they're full-time accessory, or things of that nature where they aren't touching customer pay cars at all. Right? Beyond that, It's for the most part 90% across the board. Obviously, there's going to be a little bit more, 95, 98% on the folks that are in Express, because they're not going to do a warranty wiper blade, or they're not going to do a, whatever. It'll go into the mainline shop and somebody will take care of it, whatever. But the best shops are like 90% CP, 10% warranty. Mm-hmm. And the average shop thus far that I've done analysis on are like 75, 80% warranty. Sorry, 75, 80% CP, 10 to 25% warranty. Mm-hmm. The worst shops are the ones that are lower than that. But I have yet to encounter a shop that's got a less than 75% CP average. Mm-hmm. So anybody out there that's thinking, oh, this sucks, the warranty sucks, and I'm doing nothing but warranty, do the math. Mm-hmm. Seriously, do the math. And if you got a 75% or better CP to warranty rate, and you still aren't making your 80 hours, self-reflect before you start bitching again. Because if you can't make your 80 hours in 2 weeks, and 75% of your hours are CP, it's you. It's not the dealership. It's not warranty.
That's neat. Yeah, there's a lot of. I guess it's such a drastic change between the two industries, between automotive and heavy duty, because there's a lot of terminology you're throwing out, and I'm like, okay, I know what it is, okay, yeah, so I'm following, and it's a little bit different, but yeah, I think, yeah, that automotive is probably, light years ahead of tracking when it comes to that kind of thing, and maybe it is because of just the whole flat rate pay scale and dealerships being so much larger, right?
Mm-hmm. But I think there's the opposite can also be true. Fleet, and more specifically perhaps mobile, is way ahead of in HD and truck coach than automotive is, because automotive is really just coming into its own the last 5 or so years on the mobile front, especially because of COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ed Roberts has got like 19 vans, so he's Ford store, big Ford store. Got like 19 vans mobile now. He's got like 100 techs in his shop. He's got like 19 vans on top of that with like 2-person teams in each one of these vans. So they're trying to do mobile everything that they would have in a 90 tech store. So that's a whole other ball of wax.
Yeah.
But all of the terminology is fundamentally from a service management standpoint, whether it's service manager or shop foreman or shop production manager. Jim Bernasek would love to say, and I love those phrases, but the base information technicians need to start learning, because I think as we progress, as we move on, EVs are coming down the pipe, and as much as EVs are coming down the pipe, they're just going to be another option. Mm-hmm. Right? I believe they're just going to be another option, because I think we're going to transition from heavy petrol and EV to petrol, propane, hydrogen. There's going to be lots of options out there, especially with Toyota and BMW pushing so hard for hydrogen, and how much they've done already with hydrogen. I think it's just EV is just going to be another option. And if we get into some, petrol and EV is a whole ball of wax. Stefan really brought up safety concerns in terms of EV, electricity, and flat rate, and safety concerns. We talked about OSHA earlier. Mm-hmm. Hydrogen is a whole nother ball of wax. Hindenburg was a thing for a reason.
Yeah, exactly.
So our safety in the shop needs to be thought of, and flat rate may not be the best way to pay techs in a shop with both a power pack that if you touch wrong kills you, or if you touch wrong a hydrogen fuel cell explodes the shop.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily be able to be in the same shop entity. Maybe it has to be a cordoned off portion of the shop where you work on, part of the shop is EV, part of the shop is hydrogen, part of the shop is petrol. So it's how we do things, how we pay things, the base numbers that we talk about, these are going to be heavily evolving things coming forward. And if you want to be a tech that's starting in the industry now, or roughly starting the industry now, you want to put yourself in a position where you're first, right? First is always the biggest paycheck, right? If you can say, in 5 years' time, you're going to start at a Toyota store today, and you're going to gobble up every ounce of hydrogen education you could possibly consume. That way, in 5 years' time, you're the hydrogen technician. You're going to make more money than anybody else, and you're going to do it for a while.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to do it for a while. You're going to corner market until they have lots of opportunities to do hydrogen courses in education and training, right? You want to usurp flat rate volume with hydrogen quality, making straight time hourly at 50, 55, 60, $65 an hour because you're a hyper specialist. That's what you want to do in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Be the hyper specialist.
And
I would imagine that some of your technicians are doing the same thing, right? At NAIT, you're teaching some of them now that are into that area, right?
No, we're a little bit behind. Our automotive program is probably, just where every other automotive program is, but for heavy duty, we're still teaching mechanical fuel injection on engines. So
That's depressing.
Yeah, we're behind, and I think there is finally going to be some new curriculum development in the next year or two. I'm hoping. Even like diesel emissions after treatment. It's 2 days. Right?
That's it?
That's it.
It's an entire subsystem on its own that has to run properly, or else the rest of the truck fails.
Yeah. So today I stopped by a buddy's shop, and he had, because he manages a fleet for a moving company, and he had International's field mechanic out there, because they had a DEF injector problem. So I had a quick chat with him. I said, so what's most of your calls? And he said 90% after treatment. He said 90% of the time, all my phone calls throughout the day and that I chase from plus 40 to minus 40 is after treatment. He's like, all the time, D rate 85%, okay, after treatment. He's like, I've replaced DPFs, DOCs, SCR, DEF tanks on the side of highways for guys so they can get up and moving, and he's like, that's where I'm at. So
is that mostly, I would imagine that's mostly because the regens aren't being done properly.
Yeah,
more than anything.
Done properly, contaminated DEF, all kinds of things. Idle time.
Contaminated DEF?
Yeah.
What do you mean contaminated? This is news to me. Contaminated DEF?
Oh,
Meaning
yeah.
like it's a DEF container that's gone off?
No.
Or
operators like, maybe I'll just add water because I'm low, or maybe diesel goes here. Yeah. Oh, so I ran a service truck and ran the shop for a rental company out here in Alberta that got bought out by United Rentals. I did that for just over a year, and then I decided to get back to the truck dealership world. But a lot of my calls as well were contaminated hydraulic tanks, fuel tanks, and DEF tanks, because that was when DEF was kind of first being introduced into the off-road world, especially in the rental world, right? Because anything under 40 horsepower diesel engine, I believe, doesn't need to have after treatment. So anything larger than that, so you get your packer rollers and small excavators and stuff like that, they started to be introduced to DEF, and operators weren't trained. So they're like, I don't know what goes in there, just put whatever in there, right? So I've cleaned out hydraulic oil, diesel from the DEF tank, and as well as cleaned DEF out of the fuel tank, right? Because it's actually kind of interesting. If you put about 100 liters of DEF into the fuel tank and you unscrew the element fuel filter, it's just straight crystals, right? And we know our fuel system tolerances really love crystallized debris, right? So now here you are changing low pressure pump, high pressure pump, fuel rail, fuel lines, and fuel injectors. So what's that cost on a, say Cummins ISX engine now? So we're looking at $20,000 repair because an operator decided to put
only 20.
Yeah.
Is it only 20? I'm just trying to remember. I'm trying to go back. Okay, this is going back a number of years. Anybody out there at a Dodge store can tell me what the new ones are. But I remember doing injectors on the old Cummins when they had just started to roll the 24 valve. And if I recall, they were about $1,500 a piece for 6.
Yeah.
So you're talking like $8,000 in injectors, give or take.
And then high pressure pump, common rail, fuel lines,
They're usually what, 10?
10, yeah. So I think, yeah, with around labor, I think that one, I just remember that one distinctly because I remember cutting the fuel filter open to take a look what was in there. It was just straight crystal, and I was like, "What is this?" And then because you're a
Wow.
mechanic and you're curious, you gave her the old taste test, and I'm like,
Oh.
That's deaf. That's deaf.
Yep.
That's definitely deaf." And then so you spill a little bit of fuel out onto your workbench, and you wait a little bit, and then you actually see it start to crystallize and as it starts to evaporate a little bit, and you're like, okay, so we got to quote a whole new fuel system for this truck. So yeah, that's it gets the amount of, oh man, I guess I don't know what to call it, operator abuse, or just operators either just not knowing or not caring.
I think it's just pure ignorance because
Yeah.
most of them, I would imagine, are. It's not malicious intent. I would imagine the majority of it's not malicious. It's, hey,
Yeah.
I got a job to do. This thing's not moving. It needs this. Maybe if
It's
I do
something.
this.
Yeah. Mm.
And it's usually maybe the person who is supposed to be around that's supposed to be helping out with this that maybe knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the joke is, it takes 15 guys to dig a hole, and there's only one guy operating the excavator.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it means that all 15 probably don't know how to top up the DEF in the excavator.
Yeah, exactly.
And maybe that's the thing. I don't know. I'm being very stereotypical, and I'm being rude to construction workers. But at the same time, if you're not educated, you shouldn't be doing stuff to any $1 million piece of equipment.
Exactly, and I think that's kind of a big thing. I think any operator that's out there that's running any diesel piece of equipment with an after treatment system should at least attend there's online courses. The company that I work for, we offer an online course. Company I work for on the side, we offer an online course just on after treatment, and it should be something that, hey, so they kind of have just a better understanding and how expensive some of this equipment is, that if you're gonna go and put DEF or in the fuel system or get in there messing around yourself, what can actually happen, right? So
I think that's a great segue in to the big question, because we've got folks out there that may not be the most educated operators putting stuff into stuff that they shouldn't be putting stuff into stuff. As a piece of advice, so what would in your tenure as a teacher and your career as a mechanic, what would be one piece of advice that you would give a mechanic out there to live happier, healthier, or more productive tomorrow and the next day and the day after?
Oh, I think I'm gonna have to go healthier. I think just over some of the injuries I've had as a mechanic, find a good personal trainer, or maybe even, we all have jobs and most of us have benefits and never use benefits for like massage therapy, physiotherapy, whatever. If something starts to hurt and it's like nagging, get on it right away. I dealt with a knee injury that lasted 3 or 4 years, right? And it wasn't until and then it started to affect my mobility, and then the muscle on my quad actually shrunk up because I was favoring that knee so much, right? And it wasn't until I actually found a good physiotherapist and then found a good personal trainer. But then, they were saying this kind of could have been avoided if you kind of took care of it. And then, and now my big thing is I work on mobility at least once or twice a week, just doing mobility exercises so things don't get stiff. And what it's like spending, sometimes we're spending 6 hours, 8 hours a day in a really tight spot. Body position isn't that great. And then you just go home, eat, do what you got to do, and then it's, time to hit the sack, right? So make some time to take care of yourself physically, because it's going to pay off huge as you start to age. And there are some guys out there and all they want to do is wrench till they retire, and that's great. But take care of yourself physically. Find a good personal trainer and just get you set up on a plan so that you can do some good exercises, right?
That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
I think I won't amend that myself in any way, shape, or form. My only, shall we say, addition to that is, if you happen to find yourself as a person who, if you're listening and hear that as an overwhelming thing that you need to do, when you think about your work day and you think about how much you work and what you need to do to get through your day, you feel you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders and you don't have time to do this and you don't have time to do that. Well, just like we may not have time to fix it right the first time, but we always have time to fix it right the second and third time.
Yeah.
The same thing applies to your body, but the difference is you can fix metal.
Mm-hmm.
If it's still metal, you can still fix it or you can replace it.
Mm-hmm.
Your body's not the same thing, and when time passes on a car, it doesn't care.
Mm-hmm.
We don't get time back.
Yeah, we don't get time back, and there's times
that health that you spend on yourself is important, and it doesn't have to be. Brent mentioned a PT or a personal trainer. You don't have to go to the gym 2 hours a day to be strong and lift weights and all the rest of that. You can spend 20 minutes, 15 minutes, 10 minutes a day or a couple times a week. Do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's do something to keep your mobility up, because that's the biggest thing I've found, even just in the last little bit. Sometimes, especially during COVID, because I would sit here in my office and teach a lecture for 3 or 4 hours in the morning, and you're just sitting there and you get up to move and you're like, holy crap. And then the next day you go to sit down and you're like, oh man, next thing you've got sciatic problems, and it's because of bad posture, sitting for too long, whatever. And then you go and talk to my physiotherapist. Oh yeah, you've been sitting for too long, that's why your sciatic is acting up. You get up and move around. Here's a couple mobility exercises to help with that. Start doing those, and then I found out a couple times a week, 20 minutes, 3 times a week, that it's just not there anymore, right? And it just became a habit where it's like, oh, I gotta go do that, right? So yeah, same with the knee. The knee injury plagued me for years, and I think that led to that kind of spiraled me a little bit. So, and really got down on myself as it just hurt all the time, and I didn't want to go for surgery, because then you're out for 6-8 months. So who's paying the bills if you're out for 6 or 8 months, right? WCB pay isn't that great. Short-term, long-term disability still isn't that great, right? So if you're in a position where you need to work, then you're just knocking back painkillers like Skittles, and it's not a fun road to go down. So if you can get on top of it,
I've had both knees done, and I've had my rotator cuff done on my right shoulder. It's not fun. I look at, there's a couple of things to piece apart there. If anybody's listening still, pain, forget about the injury for a second, and how it makes you modify your day, because you're going to be less productive. Forget about that for a second. Pain changes how you react to the world. So if you are experiencing pain in any way, and I mean headaches, eye aches, allergies, muscle aches, bone aches, bowel issues, whatever the case may be, if you are experiencing pain, you're not going to be as productive, and it's going to infiltrate the rest of your life. It's going to infiltrate your work life. It's going to affect your home life. It's going to affect how you and the key here, it's going to affect how you respond. And the only thing that we have control of every day is how we respond, period. You cannot control what somebody else does. You can try to influence. That's why the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, exists, because it's helpful, but you still can't control people. You can try. That's why revolutions happen. But you can try. The only thing that you can control is your ability to react to something. If your ability to react to something is hampered by pain, you're not going to react necessarily in the way that you want to. So maybe you snap at your wife. Maybe you snap at your boss. Maybe you snap at your baymate. All because you're refusing to go to the gym and do some mobility training. Or you're refusing to go see a therapist because for whatever reason, your bay made something really mean to you, and it was the last straw, and for some reason, for 25 years, 30 years of your life, you've had a thick skin. Now it's eating at you. And now that something mean he said to you is turning into monsters in your closet, which is turning into depression, which is turning into anxiety, which is turning into stress, and it turns into all of the statistics that I completely based building this business around, which is unaliving mechanics.
That's such a
pain starts that pathway. So if you are in pain, follow some instructions.
Yeah. That thick skin, that's kind of one thing that I've had to kind of maybe reflect on a little bit over the last couple of years, because it's we're mechanics, we're supposed to have thick skin, right? But that shit weighs on some people. They try and put on this tough outer layer, but at the end of the day, we don't know what's going on in their personal life, so we do have to be kindler and gentler with one another, because sometimes this, working in some shops that I've worked in, that shit just gets old, right? Like, just harassing each other. There's time and a place for it, I guess, right? But this, I don't know how to put it in words, like macho, making fun of each other all the time and just putting each other down. Like, I think that's, in our industry, that's just got to go, right? I think some guys are just tired of it, right?
I think there is a line,
mm-hmm.
and I think, one of the statements I think is very true. Very seldom do we insult, berate, harass people unless we enjoy their company.
Well, yeah.
There's a line.
Mm-hmm.
I think when it becomes hurtful is
mm-hmm.
people that we don't like.
Yes,
that's a problem.
Exactly. I think that's kind of where I was going with that. It's where I've seen that too many times, where I've seen guys sitting around the lunchroom table, and then other guys just jump in, and you can tell the look on their face, and then they just get up and leave the lunch table, and guys are just laughing about it, and it's like, no, like this, nobody knows what this guy's going through, right? It's too much. And it's like, oh, fuck, whatever, he's just got to grow up. And it's like, no, it's got to end. So
I think it's gotta end to a degree, because I don't think you're ever going to get rid of that. There's a line, like I said, there's a line there, because we as men, I think, and I'm no expert on this, but just as I get older, I'm starting to notice it maybe a little bit more. Status is a thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good, bad, or otherwise, status is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Power is a thing. Dominance is a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Leadership is a thing, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise.
Yeah.
And I think we all, especially as men, we subconsciously want to be in the lead, or we want to be, or you know what? There's people out there that love to purely follow. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that either.
Mm-hmm.
I have openly admitted that I would find myself a far better number two to somebody who's a good leader. I succeed significantly better when I have a little bit of guidance, a little bit of direction, a little bit of vision to say, this is where we want to go. These are the the bullet points of what we want to accomplish. Go do. And I'm very happy to go, okay. And then my brain goes, okay, this is how these are the 15 ways that we can accomplish this. This is the 15 ways we can accomplish it, and go. I think I'm far better in that situation, which I think is why I'm really enjoying working with Russell and Rickle at Fixed Up. I just call them Rickle. He's gonna chuckle. Yeah. Russ and Rick at Fixed Ops Marketing, because I have direction, so I can run a lot better that way. But in a context of, like you've given it in the lunchroom, when we're so and so harassing each other, when there's 3 or 4 lads that have gone on really well, no different than I have, and you walk in the room, and I remember Abby, the first time he said it. Abby was one of my groomsmen at my wedding. Abby was Trinity, so I walk in the lunchroom carrying my sandwich, and the first time he said it just made me laugh so hysterically, and it made me laugh every time. He just called me Wonder Bread, and that became the running gag every single time.
Yeah.
but I was always there for him when he needed me. He was always there for me when I needed him.
Yeah.
Same thing with my best friend, Michael Dam. Dameron was always there. And we would just literally harass the shit out of each other. But we were always, it was never a question of, if I need help. It's when I need help, Dameron will be there. When I need help, Abby will be there. Mm-hmm. There was never a question about that. Mm-hmm. And if anyone ever tried to jump in and be like, white bread or whatever the case may be, it's Abby would snap at him. Mm-hmm. Mike would snap at him.
Yeah, yeah.
It would be done.
Yeah.
When you don't have your immediate circle both be able, what's maybe it's a better a sibling analogy. No one, I'm going to absolutely flambe my sister the next time I see her, but no one else is allowed to do that. It's the same thing with your baymates, your best mates. It's the same thing that goes. I think we're losing a little bit of that, and I think you spoke on it earlier. There's a bit of a loss of mentorship, and I wouldn't necessarily say that baymates are the mentorship, but there's a loss of that person on the shop floor that was able to disseminate between what is harassment and what is a couple of the boys being boys or a couple of men being men and building relationships.
Yes, yeah.
That person is a shop foreman. Mm-hmm. I genuinely believe this loss of shop foremen, even in the small shops, is a major cause to the current predicament we're in with shortage. Amongst apprentice shortage, technician shortage, and the major sales problem, I think that the biggest reason beyond those two is a lack of leadership on the shop floor by a shop foreman.
Yes, and I think you mentioned it in one of your other previous podcasts. And it seems to be the shop foreman the guy that usually gets the shop foreman position now is the guy that was the most efficient or the corporate bootlicker, you want to call it, right? And not necessarily, and not a leader, right? But management decided, hey, you're kind of our yes man. You know a lot, so you're going to be the shop foreman, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to press your foot against everyone else to make them work harder. Well, we as technicians don't respond to that, and then the second that happens, right, you see morale, you see efficiency drop, right? And then there's always a big disconnect between technician to foreman to service manager, whatever you want to call it, right? And then you wonder why technicians are, journeyman technicians are blowing up at their foremans, right? Mm-hmm. It's because of that, and management, I think, loses sight of who's the best, not necessarily the best leader on the floor, because that could just be a popularity contest, but where's a guy that can, like you were saying, disseminate, kind of keep things flowing in the shop, can bridge the gap between everyone, right? And that's hard to come by these days. So
how do I explain this eloquently without being an idiot? A shop foreman, to me, is the first person to defend the shop, but also be the first one to eject the asshole.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
They are the people that know exactly when to do that.
Yeah.
And if the person that is running your shop as a shop foreman, because fundamentally they should be running the shop. A shop foreman should run the shop. Mm-hmm. They may not be dispatching, they may not be doing that, but they should be running the shop. Mm-hmm. They will know who's doing what, when, how, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. They will know who's capable of being pressed and who's not capable of being pressed. Mm-hmm. They will know the personalities, they will know the wives, they will know the brothers, they will know the sisters, they will know the children, they will know the anniversaries, they will know those things because they are in these people's faces all day long. A proper non-working foreman will know that. Mm-hmm. The working foreman will not know as much, if any of that. Mm-hmm. And the ones that are working foremen that do know that, like my very good friend Richard Mueller, those are unicorns.
Yes.
The ones that can produce and do that are bloody unicorns. Mm-hmm. the non-working foreman should be making a very good, healthy living, because they are literally the dumping ground for all of the technicians' shit. They are the emotional support animal for 15 to 20 men who need to be able to go to somebody and literally deluge their emotional state. And the foreman eats it and goes, all right, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
How do I help you get through today so that you can be successful and making sure you have a paycheck at the end of the day for your family and you can go home and be a civilized human being with your family? How can I help you do that? And a person that is taking on that much, it doesn't matter what industry, it needs to be paid well for that.
Oh, exactly.
And the challenge is from a management standpoint, going, well, they're not producing any work, and they're not in a administrative reporting and sales position. Why are we paying them so much money? Because this person who is your shop foreman is a leader who's capable of leading your team to success, but is also somebody who can look at all of the actual technical problems that your team is looking at and going, I can help fix that. I can help them be successful, and I can teach them how to do that so that they don't have to come and ask me again.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is an asset that is exceptionally difficult to measure. But my basic metric is whatever you're paying your non-working shop foreman, they should be 3xing their value minimum. So if let's say you have a shop of 10 technicians, you elevate one to shop foreman, non-working shop foreman, so you have 9. You bring in another one to replace him down at the bottom, so now you have a new apprentice, and you pay him. Let's say you pay him $100,000 a year. By the end of 12 months, from them acclimatizing themselves to now leading, to the end of the year, you should have added roughly $25,000 a month in revenue, just by having one. If you haven't, then maybe look at how you've trained them, maybe look at how you're communicating with them, maybe look at what their autonomy level is. Maybe they're not being able to do the things they need to do to be successful. Maybe there's environmental changes that they want to do that you've not authorized. Or maybe you've promoted the wrong individual and they are truly not capable of leadership. But there's a whole conversation around shop foreman that we're having. I think the lads and I are slowly coming to each and every episode of 10 Mil Mastery. We're coming to the conclusion that shop foreman is probably the most vital role in the entire dealership, because we help sales sell vehicles. Yes, sales sells a car, but service sells the second one. And a properly functioning shop led by a proper functioning service shop foreman is going to sell 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. They're going to sell it to the rest. You have a shop foreman capable of leading your service team also means that they're going to be able to teach service advisors, hey, this is how the shop needs to communicate. Can I help you figure out how to talk to the shop so that you can be better at what you do? You know, a shop foreman's going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
So, do you have any questions, good sir? We've been talking for a good hot minute here.
I know, right? Oh man, I think that's I don't really have many for questions. This has been great. But yeah.
Awesome.
Have I answered all your questions? I thought there was.
We've answered all of mine. We've got all of mine all answered, so that's awesome. So there's lots of good info in there for lots of folks.